Hey, 6th grade. So, I know this looks weird that there's a plate sitting on my paper, but you know what that means. I'm going to use that as my tracing object. We're going to make dragon eyes. That's basically what we're going to be focusing on today. So, this is going to be what I'm going to use to start my circle for the iris of the dragon eye. Okay, so what I'm going to do, you know I always use visual aids, and today I am using a picture that I found online of a dragon eye by Lethal Chris. Okay, and so that is the visual aid that I'm going to go by as my inspiration for the dragon eye. Ours will be a little bit different, but it's inspired by their drawing. Okay, so this is a little bit on the large side. As a matter of fact, it's probably a little bit too large. I'm not liking how big that is. I thought it was going to be a little bit smaller than that. Alright, so change of plans, guys. Never be afraid to change it up. If it takes up too much room, then you're not going to have enough room for those scales going around it, and that's kind of part of the beauty of the dragon eye. So, I think this will be big enough. So, use what you got. Okay, so I'm going to go with that. Alright. So this is going to be for the iris, okay? The iris is the colored part of your eye. This is the iris, okay? So obviously part of that is going to be shielded by the eyelid, okay? So I'm just going to kind of give myself an angle of where I'm going to have this kind of cut off. So I'm going to have it cut off right about there, okay? So how I want to do this, I want it to be really stylized. I want it to have that realistic flair to it, but I also want it to be obviously fantasy. I don't want it to look like a human eye, that's for sure. So I'm going to kind of go around with the shape of this. Okay. Okay, you're going to be using your eraser a lot. Okay. Okay, and I'm going to have it go to a point here, even though I don't want it to look like it's the tear duct side. This is the tear duct side. Okay. So, it's going to have a bigger, almost like triangle on this side, and kind of a smaller one over here. Okay. So, again, we started off with the circle, and then we cut that circle, cut part of that circle up. You still have the vast majority of the circle showing, okay? The shape of my iris, or my pupil in the iris, is going to be almost like a snake, very snake-like. You can do this. I've seen them before where people make them look even more mythical by adding this little extra bit in there, and I kind of like that. It almost gives it like a star, kind of. Okay, so I'm going to add that. That's going to be for my iris. Now, the dragon, you know, the way people usually draw dragons is they have kind of many different folds for the eye, for around the eye, okay? And those are going to be filled with scales. So I'm going to start off kind of adding those in. So I want it to be kind of closer here, and as it goes out, it's going to get a little bit bigger, and then it's going to follow that shape and just kind of go off this way. Okay? This is very important that you follow these simple things. You can start adding little stuff to make yours unique, but at least for the beginning shapes, I want them pretty much to look the same. You can do a different type of iris if you want, but as far as the shape of the overall eye, I should be able to see that you followed the steps, just like we do with our Do Now drawings. Okay, so we've got that shape. We're going to do the same kind of thing down here. It's going to be a little bit tighter here. And as it gets out here, I want it to look like it's kind of pulling away from the eye a little maybe. And then we'll have it go back in kind of suddenly. Okay, so clean that curve up a little bit. We can start to darken some of our lines a little. The lines that I know that I'm keeping. Okay. All right, so I'm going to continue with that idea of adding some of these scales to my eye. I'm going to have it get a little bit wider here, and I'm going to have it get a little bit narrower here, and have it kind of fall right into that. Okay, and for this, I'm going to have it just be, kind of follow the old circle. Okay. All right. So for this part right here, I kind of want to have like, it's going to get wider out here. Okay. So I'm going to start kind of drawing that shape in so that it's almost like this is where the bones for like the structure of the eye around the socket. And think these are all going to be scales, right? So you want to have a way, you know, for right now I'm just adding these shapes, but we're going to go in and add the scales in. Okay. Okay, I'm going to have start drawing shapes like this around it. I apologize if you hear my Great Dane. She's kind of complaining about being left. My daughter left her in the room, and she's kind of letting it be known that she's not happy about that. Oh my goodness. Okay. So for this, for the scales, we're going to start here. Okay. You just want to have it to almost, remember how if you remember how we bent the lines for our 3D hand and our op art sphere, we kind of did it in a way that gave it that illusion of being three-dimensional. We're going to do the same thing here, but it's going to be more sharp lines because I want these scales to seem kind of, I don't want them to be smooth scales. I want them to kind of be rough and sharp because I think that gives it a more interesting look for a dragon. So I'm doing these almost like V's or greater than or less than symbols because I want it to almost come out to a point. So if you give it this shape where it's going like this and then this one comes down at that angle, it's going to give it that illusion of like that's a pointy shape. So if you notice, I gave myself a little guideline. Okay, as it gets wider here, my scales are getting a little bit bigger too. Okay. Now, when it comes closer to here, it's going to be almost straight. Okay. And then I think I'm going to start having it I kind of like the way that looks. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing with this down here, although I want the ridge to be kind of following this idea, where it's almost like here it's going to go kind of straight out. And I am going to curve it just a little bit. Okay. Okay, so now this one, and then this one goes that way. See how it's starting to come along? It's looking almost snake-like, or you can tell it's scales, at least. You know, you can go back in and, you know, kind of change the edges of all this so that it gives it more of that scaled look by just kind of scalloping the edge a little bit the whole way. That's why we always start off drawing lighter, because you always get darker, but sometimes if you go too dark in the beginning, then it's going to be hard to erase if you make a mistake or if you don't like something that you've drawn in. But if I want to go back in and add a detail, I can always go a little bit darker and it's going to bring it out. Okay, so I like the way that looks. I need to get a better eraser though. I'm just erasing the original straight line. Okay. Go over that little spot right there. I like the way that's starting to look. So I'm going to do the same thing with this area here, because I think it'll look nicer if it has you know, the separation between them, like these lines will be nice and straight, but the edge have a little bit of a curve to it. Which I think I kind of already started to do naturally. Alright, so again, I'm going to continue with my scales here. And you kind of got to figure out how you're going to, how you want this to appear. Do you want this to appear like it's, you know, back behind the other ridge? You don't want them to be competing for which one's in front of which. So I want this to appear like it's sticking out further. I'm hoping I'm accomplishing that just by making these smaller and all right. Alright. That looks pretty good. Okay. So, same idea, guys. You're just going to keep doing things like this, kind of figuring out where you want there to be a ridge, where, you know, like I'm just going to darken this line up a little bit because I'm going to keep it because I like the way it looks. Okay, same thing with this line. I'm going to darken this up a little bit. I like where it is, and I like the way it looks, so I'm going to darken this in too because I know this is staying. And I'm allowing this extra little bit of a line to go out from it on both sides, just because almost as if the pupil is like closing a little bit. Alright. So I know that this is going to be a bigger area. Because it's a bigger area, I don't want it just to be flat. you know, it wouldn't be a bad idea to have like some kind of shape to it, whether it be almost, you know, something like this or something that's going to give it some kind of shape to it that makes it visually interesting. Alright. I'm going to have this come around, and it's going to go right to where those 2 points that I just drew were. I'm just going to turn this sideways for a second. I have an easier time making a rounded line if my hand's on the side there. I don't know why. I get a better curve when I do it that way. Again, I apologize, guys, for all the background noise. I am, as you all know, not a professional. I'm an art teacher. I teach middle school art, and that's what these lessons are really for, is for my students. So if you hear a lot of background noise between my kids and my dog, you know, I apologize. You know, I know people started marking stuff on it, you know, and I'm not sure what they were marking. I didn't hear any noise in the spots where they were marking it, but I assume it's from the fact that it's not a very professional channel. I apologize. Okay, so I like that shape that it's giving it. It's almost like kind of going like this with it. So I'm going to kind of keep going with that idea. So I'll have this one come to here, and then another one right to here, and then that one go like that. And I kind of like that. So you guys just play around with it. I mean, there's not really a right or wrong to this. It's a fantasy creature. The main thing that I want is I want your eye to fill the page, okay? And everything around your eye needs to be scales, pretty much. You kind of determine how big you want to put different scales, and when it's right up against the eye, I want it to be very similar to this. But as you get farther out, then it's, you know, creativity time. You can kind of decide how you want to arrange your scales. You know, I've never done this either. This is my first time drawing a dragon's eye. That's kind of why I wanted to do it. I thought it seemed like an interesting project, and if I was in middle school, I'd want to be drawing it. So that's why I decided to do it with you guys. So one way that you can do this is, you know, you kind of section it off with lines and then add the curves in there, and it's almost going to give it that wave effect. And that's why I said, like before, I was using that other artist's work as a visual, like almost like inspiration, but I'm still creating my own, because this is totally different from theirs now. It's just for the initial shape, I used it kind of as a visual aid to kind of guide me, but not for, you know, I don't feel like I need to follow that in order for this to give off the impression of being a dragon's eye. I feel like adding your own creativity is really kind of what makes it interesting. Now, when we get to the color portion of it, that's what's really going to make this pop, because we are going to use what we've learned so far with complementary colors to create the color portion of this. So that's going to be for your checkpoint 2. That's really not going to be anything with this, but you should start thinking about which complementary colors you want to use. If you remember, complementary colors are colors that are across from each other on the color wheel, okay? So you can use your color wheel that we created last week as an inspiration for, you know, okay, which colors do I think would look nice together? They need to be ones that are across from each other on the color wheel. I don't want you guys using ones that are next to each other. You know, I want it to be across from each other on the color wheel. So I'm not going to spell out which ones those are, so I want you to look at your color wheel, and you're going to choose 2 colors that fit that requirement. 2 colors that are across from each other on the color wheel. So, and we're going to be doing some blending with it, so if, you know, if you choose blue, it won't just be, you know, dark blue, or just, you know, we're going to add some other shades maybe in there so that we can get some 3D quality to it by adding lights and darks and value. So we're going to be doing a lot of focus on value. Okay, I'm liking how it's turning out so far. Okay, it's a lot of repetition, guys. It's a lot of, you know, repeating these different scale type shapes. Okay, but I think that, you know, as you get farther out, you can make them, you know, a little bit larger if you want. I'm trying to think how I want to do this. I think I want them to be smaller over here. Okay, and as it comes out here, I'm going to have them start to get bigger. Let me see. Okay. Kind of just go with how it feels. So I'm going to have these be a little bit larger here. Okay. All right. like the way that's looking. Again, I want to keep these little ones probably up to about there. Okay, so okay, go. So I like how this is starting to get kind of that rounded look. I want to make sure that it has it over here too. I don't want to lose that feeling. I definitely kind of like that scaly. Okay, so I also don't want to lose this line that's going in the center of it all. So I'm just going to darken that up too. Alright, so we're getting a nice look about it, okay? As it gets farther out, you know, like I told you before, you can have your scales get fairly large. I would still kind of keep some kind of guideline for you so that it doesn't get, you know, crazy big. Like, you don't want it to take up the rest of the paper. That would kind of lose that nice shape about it. But if you want to kind of go out rows from it, kind of like that, where you start to fill them in. So, like, to give you an example, I can make my shapes. Kind of go out from there. Now, notice I'm always very sketchy at first. I can always go back in and clean up those lines and make them more crisp later. But for me, working sketchy works because then I kind of decide the line that I like. I don't feel like I'm kind of tied down to, you know, the way it is because I can always go in and erase because I'm not drawing that dark to start. I think I'm going to erase this right here. Yeah, I like that. Okay, see how it's giving it a nice feel about it. Just kind of go around in that circle around the eye. So I'm just kind of giving it a little line because my paper cuts off right here. So anything past here, you're not going to see if once we pull the paper out of the sketchbook. Okay, but we're getting, see how it's, as you get farther away, you make it nice and big. It's really kind of coming together now. You can, if you layer it, I don't like when I do it this way, so it's kind of better if you, you know, kind of make it layered where, you know, you'll have maybe one like that, so that, you know, I don't want to have it, I want them to overlap a little. I don't want to have like seam to seam, you know. I feel like that won't look as good. So maybe this one will be a little bit bigger because it's got to go. I'm trying to feel like if I like that or not. I think I might have to do it like this. Okay. Yeah, that works. So it can be pointy there and rounded on the side there. All right. Okay. So you're basically going to end it, like have it going off the page. So notice I'm just kind of making lines in the middle and then, you know, okay. So now that is basically the end of your stage one. The only thing that I would go in and do is kind of darken up your lines. So basically, okay, now that I know that these lines are here, I'm going to go in and I'm going to darken up lines and I'm going to erase any stray marks. But I've basically got the regular drawing for the eye, the dragon's eye done. Okay? If you guys have any questions, send me an email.